Hello again, this is Dr. James Reaney, and you've tuned in just in time for Part 12. The purpose of this, the 12th leg of our journey, is to further enhance your ability to navigate through the intricacies of inner space. As your pilot, I should let you know that the velocity at which we are now traveling, because we have journeyed as deep into inner space as we have, has greatly increased. In fact, the velocity will keep mounting with each and every leg of our journey. No need for concern, however, because as far as we have come, you will have little trouble handling the accelerated pace. So prepare to accelerate as we review the main points discussed on the last leg of our journey. It was in Part 11 that you were introduced to the idea that each and every one of us have in their possession the greatest search and process engine the world has ever known, the unconscious mind. It was there that your conscious mind was made aware of its role in the information transformation process, in particular its role of giving information to the unconscious, as well as gaining access to the information the unconscious has. It was there that your conscious mind learned that the best way to manage its role was by recognizing how and when to be active, as well as how and when to be passive when exchanging information with the unconscious. Of course, for the conscious mind to make such a purposeful recognition of these active and passive modes would mean stepping outside its customary way of thinking. Nonetheless, it would be worthwhile because it would allow you to get more out of the two pillars of consciousness, the conscious and unconscious minds. Part 11 was a turning point in this prescription as it served to enlighten you as to some of the intriguing aspects of the informational relationship between the conscious and unconscious minds. Part 11 not only set the stage for Part 12, it vaulted us into another dimension of mind, a dimension few have traveled. Since this is pretty much uncharted territory, it will be necessary to continue expanding on this informational relationship between the two minds. Part of that expansion will include constellations never discussed before, called the Four Facts and Fuzzy Focus. With that having been said, we are now cleared to ignite our thrusters and progress to the next level. So open your mind and let's continue our journey by taking a second look at some aspects of everyday life that, although commonplace, gives us a window into this extraordinary dimension of mind. For example, we've all had the experience of trying to remember a name, only to have it slip further and further away the more we try to remember it. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, what pops into our head long after we've stopped thinking about it? But the very name itself. Looking at this particular phenomena from the recesses of inner space reached in Part 11, we see that the conscious mind, by letting go of the need to come up with a name, moves itself out of the active search mode and into the passive mode. More importantly, we also see that the conscious mind, by letting go, gives the unconscious the opportunity to take the task on. The unconscious, once it finds the name, will push it into conscious awareness. Ironically, we use these active and passive dimensions of conscious mind all the time. We just do it without realizing it. Take as another example the experience of doing a crossword puzzle. When we do a crossword puzzle, we alternate between the active and passive modes of processing. We do so by first reading the clue, which initiates a conscious search for the word or phrase that fits in the space provided. Of course, if we can't come up with the word or phrase that fits, we move on to the next clue. Doing this then allows the unconscious to take over, which is why when we once again return to the unsolved clue, the answer seems to be there when it wasn't before. These simple everyday examples show how the conscious mind can be profoundly more effective when it takes advantage of the unconscious mind's search and process operations. These examples show how the conscious mind is profoundly more effective by knowing when to be active and when to be passive. These examples show that if the conscious and unconscious can work like this, for something as basic as a crossword puzzle or to come up with a name, imagine what they could do if they were purposely used in this way for those really important things we want to tackle. What these particular examples illustrate is how constructive it is for the conscious mind to know when and how to be passive. Hopefully you can now appreciate the value of being passive because being passive doesn't necessarily mean nothing is happening. In fact, being passive often means something pretty powerful is happening. Remember the 90-minute cycle that says you need to take a break every 90 minutes? This cycle encourages us to become passive as a conscious mind at least once every 90 minutes. Of course, this is for a good reason, because by doing so we are allowing our unconscious and parasympathetic nervous system to engage in healing, restoration, and creative activity. Knowing when and how to be passive, ironically enough, promotes the ability to perform at higher levels. By now you should be able to see that there are so many ways in which the conscious mind can be of assistance to the self-health system of mind, body, and spirit by knowing how and when to be passive. Another example of the power of passiveness is seen with meditation. In fact, many to achieve a profound state of passiveness use meditation. The final form of passiveness that will be discussed here is the conscious mind's ability to engage in free association. Through free association, what the conscious mind does is become more the observer of mental activity rather than its designer. By just observing, the conscious mind allows all manner of thoughts and ideas, good or bad, to emerge into consciousness. Obviously, you can see from these examples how knowing how and when to be passive is invaluable if you want to take full advantage of your conscious mind. With that having been said, let's now look at how and when the conscious mind can best serve by being active. So when is it best for the conscious mind to be active? Letting Destiny Deliver says it's best when it comes to ingesting, harnessing, controlling, and manipulating information. Take, for example, the conscious mind's ability to be logical and linear. Well, this ability to be logical can go a long way when it comes to controlling strong emotions that could otherwise escalate out of control. Under circumstances such as these, the conscious mind and its ability to be logical can go a long way towards harnessing the power of these raw emotions. Again, I ask, when is it best for the conscious mind to be active? Certainly the conscious mind's ability to control and manipulate information should be used on the job. Take, for example, actors who use their conscious mind's ability to actively draw from their unconscious reservoir of memories and experiences in order to carve out the character they are trying to play. The conscious mind's ability to actively process information in its trademark style is useful not only to control emotions or to harness the power of our mental resources, but also to meaningfully deal with the forces of adversity and struggle. If done properly, adversity and struggle, rather than fragmenting consciousness, will empower consciousness. This is because times of struggle and adversity force the conscious mind, if the conscious mind will allow it, to actively think things through, to muster the will and determination needed, as well as make whatever adjustments are needed to its various attitudes, beliefs, and expectations. Perhaps the most obvious yet least recognized way in which the conscious mind actively works for us is in its ability to produce speech. This is because the ability to speak can empower us if we use it to assume our voice. Assuming your voice is more than just talking. It's expressing those things that are really important to the self, or standing up for ourselves, both of which are important. If you remember from part 2, the unconscious can understand language, but it cannot talk. As such, the unconscious definitely needs the conscious mind when it comes to expressing the wants, needs, and desires of the self. Because of this, the conscious mind must be able to use its linguistic abilities to actively promote the growth and development of the self. This is why everyone needs to assume his or her voice. Just as a plant needs to dig its roots into the soil to get what it needs from the soil, we need to assume our voice in order to get the respect we need. And just as the plant cannot flourish without a healthy root system, we cannot be healthy without a voice that is rooted in the self-health system. Assuming your voice does not mean using your voice to be defensive, to put yourself or others down, or to maintain a one-sided viewpoint. It is more a matter of being able to speak in an open, honest, and authentic manner. The conscious mind's ability to actively and purposefully process information in a manner that has been discussed here is like the relationship between the proverbial well and the bucket. Just as the conscious mind can give or gain information, be active or passive, the bucket can either put things into the well or draw from it. Likewise, the bucket is either in the active or passive mode depending on whether it is being lowered or not. And although both the bucket and the conscious mind are small in comparison to the well or the unconscious, they nonetheless are important because each plays a huge role in maximizing the exchange process. For the well to be of value, it must be kept free of contamination. One way of keeping the well clear is to line it with stone. Likewise, if the conscious mind wants to keep the unconscious uncontaminated, it must have self-health intelligence. The conscious mind, when properly insulated with self-health intelligence, is going to be more adept at actively gathering the resources it needs to get things done, to discern the toxic from the nurturing, self-health from self-sabotage, and of cultivating triggers that promote empowering states of mind, body, and spirit. The last item on this list, that is of cultivating triggers, is difficult because triggers come in many shapes and forms. Because of this, their ability to manipulate our associative matrix is immense. As such, the conscious mind must recognize the various shapes and forms triggers take. They can vary from personal articles to specific words, to names and places, beliefs, prayers, rituals, and even the wishes of a loved one. The conscious mind must handle triggers properly if it wants to spur healthy inner development. Overall, if the conscious mind can organize itself in the manner being described here, it will lead to greater competence. This is because being organized both passively and actively when it comes to the conscious mind's role of giving information to the unconscious, as well as gaining access to what the unconscious has, will give the conscious mind the control it will need to help you master your destiny. So if your conscious mind wants to competently carry out its role of giving information to the unconscious mind, as well as gaining access to the information the unconscious has, it not only needs to know how and when to be passive and active, it must also understand and use the 4 facts. Actively processing and manipulating information is something the conscious mind is naturally good at. However, with the right tools and knowledge, its powers to process can be greatly enhanced. Sometimes knowledge is the tool, such is the case with the 4 facts and fuzzy focus. First I will give you the 4 facts, then I will discuss their greater role in the fuzzy focus process. The first fact is the need to recognize that the senses of sight, sound, and sensation have tremendous power over our states of mind, body, and spirit. This is the case because they not only orient us, they also trigger us. The first fact, although simple, is nonetheless important as it forms the foundation for the second fact, which tells us that the senses of sight, sound, and sensation exist not only in concrete form where they can actually be seen, heard, or touched, but also mentally in the form of fantasy. This is instrumental because what this fact tells us is that the world of imagination triggers us just as much as the concrete world. This brings us to the third fact, which says, if the conscious mind wants to meet its biological responsibilities to the self, it must be willing to take on a special agent status. Taking on this special agent status, the conscious mind commits itself to harnessing the power contained in the senses in order to develop and express the positive potential of the self. If the conscious mind is going to make the most of its special agent status, it must be able to implement the fourth fact, which says that memories, instead of being cataloged in a way where they simply exist side by side with no real connection to each other, need to be integrated in accordance with the development of a coherent sense of self. Cataloging memories not only makes them less accessible to the conscious mind, it also takes away their power. Essentially, the fourth fact mandates that memories should be processed and reprocessed so they can help us continually reassociate experience so we can reorganize our frames of reference in a way that allows the self to grow and evolve. The conscious mind in its special agent status must use memories as well as seek out those sights, sounds, and sensations that will allow you to effectively complete things. As special agent, you need to productively use the senses and memories to activate the mind, body, and spirit. You need to cultivate the triggers that best organize the various sights, sounds, and sensations, both internally and externally, to promote healthy relationships and activity. This is exactly what athletes do, as their success depends on their ability to cultivate the triggers that access the right resources so peak performance can be achieved. Pay closer attention sometime and see how athletes engage in rituals such as the sign of the cross, prayer, or making this or that adjustment before stepping into the batter's box. In boxing, the boxers stare each other down. In the case of Pete Maravich, a prolific scoring basketball player, it was a pair of socks worn throughout his career that he believed triggered his ability to score points. I personally know of one NFL player who would go to the movies the night before a game so he would play better on game day. Cultivating triggers involves taking the inner senses of intuition, feeling, memory, and imagination and bridging them to the outer senses of sight, sound, and sensation. Because of this intricate connection between the inner and outer worlds, our brains establish neurological tracks that become like railroad tracks, automatically guiding our mind and body to carry out learned patterns of behavior. Unfortunately, we learn many of our behavior patterns before we are conscious enough to choose. This is where the conscious mind special agent status comes in handy, with its aptitude to plan, visualize, pretend, practice, and reflect. These aspects of conscious mind, which are greatly underutilized, are nonetheless instrumental as they allow us to have choice when it comes to redesigning and reorganizing our associative matrix. The conditioning that takes place between the mind and the senses is intense. This is why with experience we develop connections between particular triggers and specific memories and sensory reactions. These triggers in turn modulate psychic life. For example, if Monday is a holiday and you don't have to go back to work until Tuesday, it will seem like Monday all day Tuesday. This is because the context of it being the first day back to work triggers the memory and sensory experience of a Monday. Unfortunately, most of us allow our associative matrix to be built randomly and haphazardly.
Transfer of data incomplete.
We just don't know how or don't make the effort to cultivate triggers. Instead, they usually cultivate us. Take smoking, for example. This behavior shows how our ignorance about triggers can give them the upper hand. Before someone starts smoking, there literally are no triggers to create the desire for a cigarette. Even at the very beginning of the habit, there are few. Over time, however, more and more triggers develop both internally and externally, causing the need to smoke to become integrated into the associative matrix. If the conscious mind cannot assume the special agent status and properly organize the associative matrix, and instead lets it happen haphazardly, the self will lose itself in a self-defeating web of triggers where ideas and desires spiral out of control. If this happens, the ego, rather than becoming a special agent, will instead find itself identifying with the destructive forces that form this web of self-defeat. If by chance the conscious mind decides to assume the special agent role and take charge of how experience is interpreted and associated, it must do so in the name of self-health. To do this, it must have self-health intelligence. Self-health intelligence is the operations manual for this special agent. Since no one possesses a perfect associative matrix, the special agent will not only have to have self-health intelligence, it will also need to lead the drive to unlearn some of the things you have learned. For example, if you have learned to be somewhat detached and unemotional, your special agent will have to accept the mission of learning how to be more empathic and more connected at an emotional level. Unlearning is like removing a virus that has entered the associative matrix. This is why your conscious mind taking on the special agent status as it has been described here is so critical. Because if it fails to do so, you will not only be unable to break out of outdated modes of behavior, you will also be unable to cultivate the triggers you need to properly organize your associative matrix. Striving to fulfill our potential is only natural, but so is self-doubt and disappointment. But if your special agent can use techniques like mental rehearsal, pretending, planning, practice, and reflection to move away from doubt and disappointment, then you won't be like the foolish businessman with a profitable business who worries, and therefore takes those worries in his head and digs a very real hole in his stomach. So you make the choice. Do you use your conscious mind to entertain fear and doubt? Or do you use your conscious mind to tap the mental resources you need to lay down empowering trains of thought? Now, if you want your special agent to gain real status and rank, it must become versed in fuzzy focus. Fuzzy focus is a practice that directs your special agent to deliberately learn perspectives other than the ones it's already comfortable with. This is really necessary if your special agent is going to synchronize the outer world with the inner world. Take, for example, the song Fire and Rain by James Taylor. Knowing the story behind the song is vital if you want to put the lyrics in the right perspective and understand the song as it was intended. James Taylor wrote this song after he learned that his girlfriend had been killed in a plane crash. What happened was that his friends wanted to surprise him by flying her to him. Of course, she never arrived because the plane she was in crashed, killing her. Having this perspective, we can better understand what he is saying in the line, "Flying machines and broken dreams lying in pieces on the ground." Or, "I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen lonely days that I thought would never end. But I always thought I'd see you one more time again." One piece of information can make all the difference. That's why a special agent is needed to find the perfect perspective. Fuzzy focus is a process where you search for the perfect perspective, or in other words, the frame of reference that most accurately reflects the truth about the individual or about what is happening. Effectively doing this brings the inner and outer worlds into sync. In general, the practice of fuzzy focus gives you greater access and control over information by giving you response variety and thereby greater leeway in coming up with the right interpretation. Just as information is power, perspectives are power. So to best benefit from fuzzy focus, you need to constantly be increasing your frames of reference. Fuzzy focus is the psychological equivalent to going to the eye doctor. During the eye exam, the eye doctor has you focus on the chart while he or she flips through the various lenses in order to come up with the one that enables you to see best. In the case of fuzzy focus, the various lenses are frames of reference. With fuzzy focus, we are always playing eye doctor as we are actively searching for the lens that will bring the truth to light. Your ability to use fuzzy focus effectively will depend on your ability to acquire more and more perspectives and develop them so you can come up with the right interpretation of experience. Used correctly, fuzzy focus empowers the mind by increasing its ability to have a variety of explanations for each situation instead of the same old, predictable, and maybe distorted view. Other people are fabulous resources when it comes to developing a fuzzy focus, because they will come up with perspectives you would have never thought of. Fuzzy focus is powerful not only because it can help you better understand what is happening, but also because it can help you transform the problematic into the productive. You know what they say, behind every dark cloud there is a silver lining, so use fuzzy focus to find it. As far as your special agent is concerned, fuzzy focus is priceless because it gives the conscious mind an active, open, and growing way to develop new frames of reference and gain perspective in order to come up with the needed ideas, insights, or intuitions. Before we bring part 11 to a close, I would like to challenge you to begin using fuzzy focus by appreciating that you are competent. I would also like to challenge you to understand how attitudes, beliefs, expectations, and willingness all impact the outcome of your efforts. Lastly, I would like to encourage you to use fuzzy focus and your associative matrix in a way that will help you get access to the attitudes and beliefs that will most effectively help you bridge the gap between the inner world and the stage of the outer world. With those challenges put to you, it's time to let your unconscious incubate whatever learning you've achieved while your conscious mind goes on to something else. Then when you resume your journey, you will have the benefit of the work your unconscious has done. This is Dr. James Reaney signing off the air.
And you? Everything's running smoothly.